He was just a quiet, single dad who wanted his son to learn swimming. But he became so much more to me. I'd been running fitness classes for adults for years, but starting my own freelance swimming coach gig felt like standing on the edge of a new pool, toes curled, unsure how deep the water might be. I thought it would be just another summer job. I was wrong. Kids had always been my favorite part of gym work, the way they laughed through push-ups or made a game out of stretching. So, when I decided to branch out, I put up a post in a local Facebook parents group. Certified fitness trainer, now offering summer swim lessons for children, patient instruction, small groups, or one-on-one. A week later, a short message landed in my inbox. Mark, hi. I'm looking for lessons for my 7-year-old Daniel. He's nervous around water, but I'd like him to get comfortable this summer. Are you available? I replied right away, and by Saturday morning, we'd arranged to meet at the community pool. I arrived early, spreading kickboards along the shallow end. The water shimmered in the morning light. Somewhere beyond the trees, cicadas buzzed. I was checking the chlorine level when they appeared, a tall man holding a small boy's hand. Mark looked exactly how I'd pictured from his messages. Broad shoulders, quiet posture, hair a little ruffled like he hadn't noticed the breeze. Daniel clung to his dad's arm, a pair of brand new goggles sliding down his forehead. Jeremy. Mark's voice was low, careful. That's me. I smiled at the boy. And you must be Daniel. Daniel half hid behind his dad's leg, mumbling something I couldn't catch. Mark bent and whispered encouragement. Then to me, he said he's shy at first. That's okay, I said. We'll take things slow. We sat poolside together, while Daniel dipped tentative toes in the water. I knelt, so we were eye level. You know, I told him, the pool might look big, but today we're only going to play with this little corner. Just us, a kickboard, and a lot of splashing. He gave me a weary look, but the corners of his mouth twitched. Bit by bit, we made progress. First, sitting with feet in, then standing on the step, then letting the water reach his knees. When he finally agreed to hold the board while I supported his belly, Mark straightened from his bench, as if surprised. Look at you, Daniel, he called softly. Daniel giggled the first sound that wasn't a whisper, and paddled a few inches. I caught Mark's eyes across the pool. There was gratitude there, and something heavier, like he'd been holding his breath all morning. By the end of the hour, Daniel was clinging to the edge but laughing, droplets running off his nose. Mark crouched to wrap him in a towel. What do you say? Thank you, Coach Jeremy, Daniel said, voice small but proud. You're welcome, champ. I ruffled his hair, warm from the Sunday mark, lingered a second longer than needed, as if weighing words, then only said, Same time tomorrow. Absolutely. As they walked away, I noticed the way Mark's hand stayed steady on his son's back, protective and tender all at once. Something about it made the air around me shift, a quiet invitation to keep showing up. The following afternoon, the sun was higher, the sky a crisp blue, and Daniel was already waiting by the shallow end. When I arrived, Mark stood with him, sunglasses hooked into the collar of his t-shirt, a messenger bag slung over one shoulder. Morning, I called. Hey. Mark gave a small nod, then crouched to speak to Daniel. Coach Jeremy's here, buddy. I've got errands, so you listen to him. Okay. Daniel nodded solemnly, clutching his goggles. Mark glanced at me. If that's all right, I'll be back before the session ends. Of course, I said. We'll be fine. When Mark left, Daniel's eyes followed him until he disappeared through the gate. I crouched beside the boy. Ready to make bigger splashes today? Daniel hesitated, then whispered, Okay, we started with simple games, blowing bubbles, floating a rubber duck across the steps. He was tense at first, but gradually loosened, shoulders dipping under the water as he learned to trust that the surface would hold him. During a short break, as we sat on the pool's edge, kicking at the ripples, I tried gentle conversation. "So, Daniel, what does your dad do when he's not hanging out with you?" "He builds things," Daniel said, eyes brightening. "Big buildings. He's an engineer. Wow, that's pretty cool." I passed him a sip of water. "And your mom?" His feet paused mid-kick. "Mom lives in another house. Dad and Mom don't live together anymore." He looked down at the pool tiles, then added matter-of-factly, "But Dad takes care of me. We eat pancakes every Saturday." The way he said it, calm but sure, tugged at me. "He must be proud to have such a good kid," I said. "You really love your dad, huh?" Daniel grinned, water sparkling off his cheeks. "Yeah." We finished with a short floating exercise, Daniel lying across my arms like a starfish. By the end, he was giggling, water dripping from his hair. Mark arrived just as I was wrapping Daniel in a towel. "How'd it go?" he asked. "Someone discovered he can float like a pro," I said. Daniel beamed, showing the small gap where a tooth had been. Mark's mouth softened into a smile, wider than yesterday's. As we gathered our things, Mark hesitated. "You've been great with him. Would you have dinner with us? There's a little cafe next to the pool. My treat just to thank you for spending extra time." "I'd like that," I said before I could overthink. The cafe was shaded by wide umbrellas, its tables overlooking the quiet end of the pool. Daniel sat between us, legs swinging, while we ordered grilled chicken and lemonade. Conversation started around Daniel's progress, then shifted Mark asking about my work, me asking how long he'd lived in town. When our food arrived, Daniel was more interested in the toy corner nearby. Mark gave him permission to explore within sight, and suddenly it was just the two of us. At the table, Mark rested his elbows on the wood, fingers laced. "I don't usually have much time to sit like this," he admitted, eyes on the water. "Work keeps me busy. It's a juggle being there for Daniel, finishing projects. Some days I feel like I'm barely keeping my head above water." I listened, noticing how carefully he chose his words. "I can imagine it's a lot," I said, "but he clearly feels safe with you. That's huge." Mark's gaze met mine, then steady, a little vulnerable. "He's all I've got," he said quietly. "I just want him to grow up knowing someone's in his corner." "You're already giving him that," I replied. "He talks about you like you're his hero." The corner of his mouth lifted, but his eyes stayed thoughtful. We let the conversation drift to lighter things, weekend hikes. The best coffee in town. Soon, Daniel came running back, clutching a plastic shark, cheeks flushed from play. When the evening breeze cooled the air, Mark gathered their things. "Thanks again," he said, as we walked to the parking lot. "Not just for today, for how patient you've been. It's easy when he's such a great kid," I said. He looked at me for a heartbeat. Longer than necessary, then gave a quiet good night before buckling Daniel into the car. As they drove off, I stood with my hands in my pockets, realizing I was smiling to myself. The week after our dinner felt unusually long. I'd grown used to seeing Daniel's grin at the pool, the way Mark's quiet warmth anchored the space around us. By Thursday afternoon, sunlight slanting through the windows of the sports complex, I was already laying out noodles and kickboards when my phone buzzed. Mark stuck at work. "I'll be late for pickup. Is it okay if you keep Daniel until I get there?" I texted back before the message bubble had even settled. "Of course, we'll finish the lesson and hang out until you arrive." Daniel was already at the water's edge, fiddling with his goggles. "Dad's working late," I told him gently. "But we've got time to play. Want to try drawing after we swim?" His face lit up. I brought my crayons. The lesson was smooth, bubble-blowing, gliding from step to step, and a new challenge, pushing off the wall. Each time he surfaced, hair plastered to his forehead, he grinned wider. When we wrapped up, I toweled him off and slung my bag over one shoulder. "How about we finish our afternoon at my place?" I suggested. "You can draw while we wait for your dad." Daniel's eyes widened in that mix of surprise and delight. "Only kids manage." "Really? Can I draw a shark?" "Absolutely." My apartment was only 10 minutes from the pool. I opened the door to a faint citrus scent. I'd left a candle burning earlier and led Daniel inside. He surveyed everything with the solemn curiosity of a small explorer. The bookshelf crammed with sports manuals, the framed photo of my nieces on a beach, the plant drooping from too little water. I spread paper and markers across the coffee table. "Okay, future artist, show me your best shark." Daniel settled cross-legged on the rug, tongue caught between his teeth as he worked. I watched from the kitchen doorway, brewing iced tea, feeling an unfamiliar tug in my chest. Caring for kids in the gym was always temporary high fives at the end of class. "See you next week." Smiles. But this felt different, softer, closer. When a knock finally sounded, Daniel barely glanced up, still perfecting his shark's teeth. I opened the door to find Mark standing there, shoulders heavy from the day, but eyes brightening when he saw us. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. "He's not done with his masterpiece." Mark entered slowly, gaze sweeping the room, as if memorizing the details. He crouched beside his son. "That's one ferocious shark, Donnie." Daniel beamed. "Jeremy says it can live in the bathtub." Mark chuckled, then looked at me. "Thanks for keeping him." His voice was low, threaded with something more than gratitude. "Any time," I replied. We moved to the sofa, while Daniel added bubbles around his shark. Mark sank into the cushions, leaning back with an exhale that seemed to release the whole workday from his shoulders. I sat a little apart, unsure whether to fill the quiet. It was he who finally spoke. "Some days I wonder if I'm doing this right," he said, eyes fixed on the child at the table, balancing deadlines, making sure he's happy. I worry I'm missing too much. "You're not," I said. "He feels loved. You can see it in everything he says about you." Mark's gaze slid toward me. There was a softness there, cautious but steady. "He's lucky you're in his corner, too," he murmured. "I didn't expect anyone to connect with him so easily." I smiled. "Daniel's easy to care about. He's smart, kind, full of stories." "Stories?" Mark raised a brow. "About sharks, pancakes, how you let him stay up late to watch meteor showers?" I shrugged. "He's proud of you." Mark let out a quiet laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. "Guess he tells you everything." For a while, we just sat listening to crayons squeak over paper. The late sun spilled gold across the room, catching in Mark's hair. I felt the moment stretch unhurried, content, until Daniel held up his finished drawing, all done. Mark inspected it, with mock seriousness. "That's a shark I wouldn't mess with." He ruffled Daniel's hair, then met my eyes again, gratitude plain on his face. By the time they left, twilight had settled outside. Daniel waved from the car window. Shark held high, while Mark offered a quiet good night. I closed the door, heart still throwing from the easy warmth of their visit. The following days, blurred with swim sessions and text messages, small things at first, confirming lesson times, sending a photo of Daniel practicing kicks in the tub, a quick thanks for my patience. But each message felt like a stone skipping closer, ripples spreading. One evening after practice, Daniel dashed to the locker room to grab his towel, while Mark lingered by the poolside. He looked tired, yet relaxed, watching the water surface. "Jeremy," he said after a pause, "I just want you to know how much I appreciate this. You've given him confidence more than I could have managed alone. I shook my head. You've done the hard work. I just get to cheer him on. Mark's hand brushed my shoulder light, tentative. Still, it means a lot. The touch stayed with me all night, echoing in the quiet of my apartment as I composed and deleted a dozen texts. Eventually, I settled on something simple. The reply came within minutes. Good night, Jeremy. Thanks for everything today. I set the phone aside, but sleep was slow to arrive. The summer days rolled forward. Daniel's kick turned into a small, clumsy stroke. He learned to float without clinging to the wall. Mark started taking photos during sessions, Daniel grinning at the camera, or me crouched to give him a high five. Sometimes Mark caught both of us in the frame, and I'd catch him looking at the picture afterwards, a faint smile playing on his lips. By the time August hinted at cooler evenings, Daniel was ready to return to school. I didn't expect the hollow that opened in my chest after our last weekday lesson, watching him wave goodbye in his new sneakers. The pool felt strangely still, without his laughter bouncing off the tiles. I tried to stay busy, morning runs, tidying my apartment, teaching adult clients, but I found myself checking my phone more often, half hoping for a message. One night, as I was finishing paperwork, my phone chimed. Mark, are you free tonight? Maybe we could grab a bite. Just us. My heart skipped. I typed back before nerves could intervene. I'd like that. We met at a quiet restaurant, tucked behind a row of trees, soft light spilling from its windows. Mark was already there, standing by the entrance in a dark button-down, hands in his pockets. Without Daniel between us, the space felt different, charged, a little uncertain. Over dinner, we spoke about work, school supplies, even a disastrous pancake attempt Daniel had made. Laughter came easier than I'd expected. Then the conversation thinned, leaving only the low hum of music and the warmth of candlelight. Mark cleared his throat. I don't really know how to say this, he began. You've become important to Daniel, obviously. And to me. He hesitated, eyes steady on mine. It scares me a little. I don't know what this could look like. I reached across the table, fingers brushing the wood. We don't have to define anything tonight, I said quietly. I just know that I care about both of you. I want to see where it goes. Something softened in his shoulders, like a door easing open. You're sure? I am, I said, feeling the truth of it settle deep inside. Whatever happens, I'm here. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The restaurant's lights flickered against the glass, and beyond them, the night stretched wide, waiting. The quiet that followed wasn't awkward. It was steady, like a breath held and finally released. When we stepped outside later, the river glinted under streetlights, rain misting against the pavement. Mark walked me to my car, hands shoved into his jacket pockets. Before I opened the door, he paused. Thank you, he said. Not just for the evening, I realized, but for the space we'd built, for Daniel's laughter, for quiet talks, for everything we hadn't yet named. I smiled, heart full. See you tomorrow. Yeah, he said, and there was a softness in his voice that stayed with me all the way home. On Sunday, Daniel ran into my arms at the pool, chattering about school projects and a new goldfish. Mark stood nearby, his gaze meeting mine with a familiarity that felt like sunlight after rain. Whatever lay ahead, lessons, dinners, small moments woven into larger days. I knew this was where I wanted to be. Beside them, shaping something patient and real, one stroke at a time. So, thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and consider making a donation to our channel if you enjoyed this slow burn romance love story. See you soon.